Okay, as the city manager alluded to, we do have item F as our last item tonight is the adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Municipal Resources Group LLC to prepare a law enforcement services analysis report and recommendations for the cities of Millbrae and San Bruno, and authorizing appropriation of $27,000 for San Bruno's share of the study cost. City manager.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Once again, similar to an experience that we have in the fire service, we are requesting the opportunity to contract with a qualified consulting group to do an analysis that would look at not only at the shared services arrangement with the police chief position that we were just discussing, but that would also take a longer term and fully comprehensive look at opportunities for our two cities to partner, if that is considered to be mutually beneficial for the two cities, in the arena of delivery of law enforcement services. Once again, these ideas are prompted by a creative response to our current and continuing budget restrictions or revenue constraints. And so we want to fully evaluate not only the current arrangement, but what other options might be out there, both at a minimal to a larger cost savings. The study would intend to look at options up to and including, but not limited to, full consolidation between our two agencies. And it would fully involve and consider the various issues and items of priority and concern within each of our communities. The study that's proposed would result in a written report that would be reviewed carefully both by the subcommittee of the City Council as well as by the full City Council and your counterparts in Millbrae, so that you have the opportunity to take a look at the results and to evaluate with no preconceived notion of what really is in the best interests of our two communities. You would have the opportunity to review, evaluate, and then subsequently to determine if there is an option that you'd like to proceed with implementation. And it's on that last point that I'd like to comment a little bit further before asking if the consultants who are in the audience tonight would like to make a few additional comments. And that is that while implementation is not presumed and that there is no preconceived idea about any particular option that might be determined to be of benefit and interest to the communities, this study does not include hand-holding or working through an actual implementation process. And I wanted to make sure that the council understands that, because there may need, depending on where we get with the study and what avenues we would like to pursue, there may in fact be some to a significant amount of additional work that would be necessary to fully situate us into a longer term different arrangement, if that is something that is of interest to our two communities. With that, there are two principals of the Municipal Resource Group present in the audience tonight, Mr. Mike Oliver, who is president of the firm, and Mr. Tom Sinclair, who is one of the principals and one of the primary staff persons in their organization who would be performing the study. And if it's the council's interest, I'd like to ask them to make a couple of quick comments about their previous experiences and the opportunity that is presented in performing an independent analysis for their two cities.
Please.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the City Council, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm Mike Oliver, President of Municipal Resource Group, and this is my partner, Tom Sinclair. Just a quick overview. Municipal Resource Group is a group of 6 professionals who have all had local government experience who specialize in different areas. We do recreation and parks, police activities, fire. We do finance, some civil engineering, and I'm sort of the overall guy. We have had between us a whole heck of a lot of experience. We don't want to add it up because somebody pointed out the United States probably wasn't existent if you added all our numbers up. But we have been through a number of situations similar to this in our careers. Tom and I both have served as city managers in a number of cities. I was the manager in San Leandro for a number of years, and at that point was able to consolidate our fire operations in 1995 with Alameda County. And that was the beginning. That was another downturn situation. That was the beginning of fire consolidations in Northern California. Subsequent to that, I've been the city manager in 2 new cities, the city of Citrus Heights, which incorporated in the 90s, and then the city of Oakley most recently, and negotiated contracts for law enforcement services in both of those cities, and have had varieties of other experiences with other cities, smaller jurisdictions, in their service level considerations for law enforcement, as well as a number of other areas. Tom's specialty area has historically been finance, although he was the first city manager of Orinda and also had a contract arrangement for law enforcement. We're really excited to see you taking a leadership role here in this relatively new area of consideration for joint and shared services. As I mentioned, fire service consolidations have been around for some time and have been growing in their scope and scale. We believe that there are many similar characteristics in law enforcement services that can be provided to the local jurisdictions on a seamless basis without losing those unique qualities that are so important to each jurisdiction. Each city, despite the fact that they may be adjacent to one another, has its own personality, its own character, and it's important to preserve those elements and to have the local law enforcement efforts recognize and honor those and maintain those. That's one of the difficulties or the challenges you have in incorporating a new city with a new law enforcement services, which we did in Sacramento. That was the first, Citrus Heights was the first 90,000 population, first city to contract for law enforcement services with Sacramento County. And the third member of our team is a gentleman named Dan Drummond, who worked for the Sac County Sheriff's Department for a number of years, has been the chief of West Sacramento, and has created a number of new jurisdiction service providers in Rancho Cordova, Citrus Heights, and Elk Grove. So we're very confident that this community has already gotten off to a good start with the shared fire services, and that law enforcement is something under the leadership of your current chief that could occur in one form or another. We haven't prejudged that. We haven't gone through your budgets. We haven't met with your staff. We haven't looked at your agreements for law enforcement contracts with your service providers, and we don't know all of your configurations, and it's very critical for us to take this one step at a time, and that would be the first step in this process. We'd estimate that would take about 3 weeks for us to complete that initial look at your services, to interview the staff, put the budget numbers and the operations together side by side. Then what we would do in this contract that would take another several weeks would be to identify those opportunities for cooperation or consolidation or joint sourcing of resources, and work through those with the involved personnel, including the city managers and the staff of the 2 departments. At that point, we would then take some time based on that input and put together a draft report for consideration and evaluation, and that's testing the scenarios that are and the options that would be available. And we would not just come up with one quote-unquote solution, but we would provide an array of analyses of different options in areas that the cities could engage in, up to and including a full single department. At that point, based on the input we would get from potentially the community, the city council members, the staff, we would prepare that final report for adoption and approval. And that also would include an implementation plan. We believe that the implementation plan is really the crucial element. Once the 2 jurisdictions have decided what directions they want to go in, that step-by-step detailed approach with a timeline generally is really the essential ingredient that we hand off, and that the city could either use us to assist in implementing or someone else. But the point is that we feel that is really the toolkit that you'd have then to be able to go ahead, understand what you had to do, get that done, and to manage and monitor that, because that's very important to make sure that occurs in the fashion that you've desired and when you made your decision. So be glad to answer any questions. Tom's here to answer questions, and we're here to help you if we can.
Questions of the consultants at this time? Michael?
Just in general, I think that moving forward with this plan is definitely a good idea. We definitely need to look at what benefits are there, and I think we are going to find some savings in sharing some services. What I don't really agree on, and it's actually a very good thing that you guys are here to speak to this, because my proposal would be that we do this using city staff from both cities versus using a consultant for this. And some of the things I'm thinking about here are, first of all, we have to go back into the reserves to fund this. This is not something that we're funded for. We've already dipped into the reserves, and my colleagues up here made it very clear that going into the reserves is not something that we like to do. We just had to do it in a big way at our last meeting, and we'll have to do it again. Additionally, I think that even though staff is pressed, I mean, our staff is shrinking. It seems like every time we have to make a budget decision, staff gets even smaller, so I know that they're really pressed for time. But it seems like we're going to have to dedicate a lot of staff time to this effort anyway. You said 3 weeks to come in and interview people and kind of basically take knowledge we already have and kind of can it for us and then feed it back to us. So we're going to make a significant investment in that time anyway. I also thought that maybe going through this exercise might be a good development opportunity for our staff. You guys were city managers at one time, and you've developed some expertise in this, and now you can sell it to other cities. But fire last time, police now, next time maybe public works, maybe parks and rec get merged. It would be a great skill set for our staff to have, and here's an opportunity where there's not time pressure to get it done ASAP. We have the luxury of maybe taking a little longer, developing staff, and making a learning experience out of it. Being that we're going to share a chief already, we have an opportunity to maybe let that settle in a little bit, make the cultures a little more aligned before we move forward with anything else. And also, if we do this, I hate to say it, by committee, where we involve a lot of staff in the development of the whole process, start to finish, the ability to get buy-in on what we're doing going forward is going to be built into it. So those are the reasons why I would think we would want to do it in-house, and so I would let you address those.
Get Tom up here. No, I'm kidding. I think you've made some really good points, and what I would suggest, one other element that you might want to consider is this, and that is, I don't know if you've seen our logo, but it's a little hokey, but it's true. It's a grizzly bear. The Municipal Resource Group's logo is based on that. And one of the things, Tom went to Cal, so he thinks it's a golden bear, but it's not. I didn't. I'm a state school guy. But basically, in past years, when I've had to reduce workforces and I've had to save millions of dollars in the budgets I was responsible for, we always involve the staff in those discussions, and would hold all-hands meetings, would put together teams, would get everybody involved in that. And to a great degree, what that does is it builds a synergy in the organization for the organization to think about those issues. The difficulties I think that one encounters is that there is a relationship within that organization that bonds that group together. And that same relationship on occasion can keep that group from being able to individuate, that is, to be objective and take a look at the organizations overall without considering the personalities, and to look at it from a more structural and a more dispassionate view. And so part of what we're providing, we would hope, would be some objective experience that's outside of the two organizations, that looks at the organizations in a more dispassionate way and has a sense of what the I won't say the real needs, but the needs that independently one could consider. Now, that doesn't make it easy for those who are recipients of some of those issues, but I think it may be, in these cases, effective in the long term to achieve the goals that are desired. And part of it is that the in-house solutions, generally speaking, don't get where you really need to go. And the reason for that is they just haven't been out in the state of California either doing this in other cities, having had those experiences, and seeing what in fact has been done in other areas and can be done. And bringing that expertise to this endeavor is what we would be doing. Dan Drummond has, as I said, been 30 years experience in law enforcement in a variety of situations, in a variety of different organizations, and not only setting up new departments, but also in West Sacramento, rebuilding an entire department and looking at how to modify and exchange and change that organization to fit the needs of the community. And so I think that's basically what we bring. Certainly, the input from the organization is essential. It's very important, and buy-in in the longer term is important. But I think that more structural look at the organization and the cost elements and the service elements is what we bring. Thank you.
If I might add just a very quick comment, because I know other council members would like to speak on this. In addition to what Mr. Oliver has suggested, and I might suggest that your staff most likely has the ability to do the study, I can assure you that it would take us substantially longer than it would take the group that is proposed here tonight. Primarily because of one item that Mr. Oliver suggested, and that is that exposure and experience to a variety of other situations, while something that we could develop the necessary familiarity, would take significantly longer than this team would provide. The second and perhaps more significant issue, and really from a day-to-day operational perspective, it is true that we have reduced our staff. We've reduced our services and our service capacity, and this is precisely the type of thing that would require us to have a pretty focused conversation on exactly what are we not going to do in order to be able to devote the time that would be necessary in order to produce the work. So just offer that for your consideration as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I don't question your experience. Sounds as if you've been through many scenarios. Have you had any situations where you've probably had to say it's not going to work, that they're similar to what we're looking at, and what sort of challenges are we looking at?
You know, it's interesting. It's too early for us to really have a sense, other than the fact that we believe that it's very positive that the two organizations have worked as cooperatively as they have on other issues. There are situations where it won't work, and we are very proud of our independence and our objectivity. If that concern came up, we would certainly share that with you, and that was an item, as a matter of fact, we discussed with the City of Millbrae City Council also. They asked the same question because we have to try and maintain the representation of the best interests of both entities, and if there's a discontinuity there, we would certainly bring that up and point that out without hesitation. I mean, not in a overtly public way, but we would certainly try and convey that concern, because it doesn't always work as well as one would hope in some of these situations.
And it's funny because when this issue first came up, I guess a few weeks back or something, one of my comments would be, well, if they're working for both of us, would they comment on what each of us might be saying about each other?
It would be only good things that we were saying about each other.
It's nice to go with all good things, but there are things that need to be said sometimes.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Through the chair,
You obviously would go forward and you would be talking to a lot of the staff in both cities. And that is at all levels, from command down to the patrol?
And we take our cue from the chief and the city managers certainly. But yes, that would be our expectation.
But you're speaking to everyone within the department, not just the administration, not just the command staff?
Well, I say everyone, I'm not sure about the dispatchers and those folks, but we'd certainly try and.
Sworn
and
personnel.
Sample as many folks as we could, talk to them and set those opportunities up, for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate Councilmember Salazar about the funding source, because it's something that obviously is dear to my heart. And, I do realize that we're saving $40,000 for the remainder of this budget cycle with what we just passed with Millbrae. I know we'll be saving over $100,000 in the next budget cycle out of the general fund. I was hoping that maybe there would be some left over. I think I've been told it's probably going to be very tight as we end on June 30th, in hopes if we do have, maybe we can repay back some to the reserves if there is anything remaining from cost savings. But I also think going forward, I think it's important that we have an established somebody who's a neutral party, who can interact with both agencies that they feel confident with. In addition, they're going forward and they're talking to all people within the department. So I think if we had a command staff person or the chief asking a patrol officer, so let me ask you this. I don't know if we would get the same response and honesty. I don't mean that they're hiding something. I just mean that sometimes with an outside party, you get more upfront, frank conversation and dialogue, and they've done this obviously for a living for some time. And I think that is the kind of information that we need, independent eyes to come in and say, can this and will this work? And based on what they know and the knowledge that they have, with the two cities together, is this a viable opportunity for our future and for the betterment of the citizens' service level during these hard times and reductions? So for that reason, I'm willing to go forward with this in hopes that we won't have to actually dip in that whole amount when we come and look at it June 30th.
Mary?
I have nothing.
Yeah.
I have no voice and I have nothing to say.
Okay, I just want to make a brief comment too, and it will be brief. I think the foundation is laid. I know that the council members in Millbrae are very positive on this, and we have a very good relationship in fire. We are potentially expanding our fire services when that consultant finishes. But we'll see where that goes. But it's a very positive situation. I haven't heard anything negative other than some questions, which in fact you will flesh out pretty well. So I think it's very exciting, and I look forward to it. This is a resolution. Would someone like to introduce?
I'll go ahead and introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
No.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.